Thanks, Ella. Hey, everyone. My name is Daniil Zaika, and I am a senior cloud advisor here at TierPoint. And when I'm not talking to customers like yourselves about your AI posture and what's the art of the possible, or tinkering with agents on my own, you can find me hiking up mountains or snowboarding down mountains, depending on the season. Justin?
Yep, I'm a pre-sales architect with TierPoint. Professionally, been in IT for about 25 years, and most of that's been focused on infrastructure consulting for Microsoft solutions. Outside of work, I enjoy electronics like radio communications and gardening, growing rare fig cultivars, and spending time with family in the outdoors.
Awesome. All right. So why are we here today? AI. It's obviously the hot topic. It's everywhere. Today's session, we're not going to be talking to you about what it is or what it isn't or what it can or can't do. And we're not going to talk to y'all about what tools you should go out and buy to solve all your problems. Because frankly, as end users and AI adopters, you're probably already using too many of them as is, like me. And you know what works for you, what you like, and what you don't like. But at the same time, you're also IT leaders. And so you're concerned about doing AI right. You want to ensure that your projects are not only possible, but also successful and safe and responsible. And even more so, AI today isn't the same as it was last week. It's certainly not the same as it's going to be next week. And that's fine in our personal lives. Those move fast, things change. But when the lines start to blur and the same tools start creeping into our corporate data, that's where IT leaders like yourselves really start to get a little bit panicked. If you think of 2024 as the year of the POC, we were testing the waters and what it can do. We're checking it out to see how we could integrate it into our business. 2026 is really about taking a step back and ensuring successful, responsible AI implementation. Projects really do need to have outcomes tied to results. And the POCs of previous years are often abandoned because of risk and improper security around our data. Now there's all kinds of financial implications. There's new laws, there's rules about bias implicity and eroding customer confidence. So companies are subject to fines, lawsuits, and unhappy customers because of what AI creates and decisions that it makes. So the conversation has really shifted from, oh, this will be helpful one day, to focus on three specific questions. Where does it actually help? How fast do we need to move? And really, how do we do this without creating chaos, risk, or leaving behind a giant mess that we're going to regret later? So that's really the lens that I invite you to look at this as Justin and I are talking to you today, and you start thinking about your own organization's readiness. All right, so let's back up a little bit, set the stage. AI adoption isn't coming, it's already here, and it's accelerating faster than most organizations can keep up. What we're seeing in the field is these conversations with leaders. Leadership teams are pushing aggressively for AI-driven value. They want better decisions, they want faster operations, they want real outcomes. But at the same time, they've seen that their employees have already dove in. You're all using the tools, Copilot, ChatGPT, Cursor, Gemini. Sometimes it's to help you write emails, sometimes it's to analyze data, but sometimes it's actually to make real decisions for the business that y'all used to ask. And here's the rub. 93% of business leaders say that they're concerned about employees' use of shadow AI. And it's not because employees are doing something wrong. It's because the organization just isn't ready. Another stat that jumped out at me, over half of executives say AI is critical to improving customer outcomes and cost structure. Fewer than half feel confident in that the data they're feeding the tools. So what does that mean? People want AI to make business decisions for them, but they don't know how to make the data trustable. I was talking to a CIO recently who said, Daniel, I'm not worried about what my people can use AI. I'm worried about the data that they're feeding it at 11:30 at night. And that's a story that we've seen everywhere. The demand for AI value is very real, but we've seen the foundation is shaky. So let's remove any illusion that AI is some future initiative. It's already inside your organization. And the problem is it's not a strategy, it's a behavior. According to Microsoft, roughly 75% of knowledge workers are already using AI tools, but many are without formal approval, formal visibility, and guardrails. And that's what we mean by shadow AI. It's unapproved, it's unmonitored, and sometimes it leads to data being shared outside the organization, often unintentionally. We've seen situations where someone drops a spreadsheet into an AI tool just to summarize it, not realizing that it contains sensitive pricing models or customer data that gets out there. And it's not about being malicious. No one's trying to cause harm, but it's about speed outpacing governance or lack thereof. And that's really the key takeaway here. You don't stop AI adoption by blocking these tools. People are going to use them anyway. You really need to step back and fix the foundation. And this is really where the conversation is focused. AI, it doesn't and can't create value on its own. Data fuels it. And it's your data. It's not the model. It's your company's data that's your competitive advantage. Every successful, powerful AI outcome that we've seen comes from organizations that can answer three basic questions. Can I trust my data? Can I access it securely? And can I govern how it's used? Bad data doesn't slow AI down. It actively produces bad outcomes. Remember, AI is inherently biased, so it creates biased results. And if you have incomplete data, stale data, and inconsistent data, you end up with AI that's giving you the wrong answer confidently. And that's where we tie these back to these pesky laws that are rolling out that mandate that your AI systems don't create bad and biased information. So when we talk about data readiness, it really breaks down into three issues that we see everywhere. The first is that data is too distributed. It lives everywhere. It's across your cloud apps. It's across your legacy systems, off-prem, on-prem, wherever. There's tons of different sources, and AI can't reach out and touch it. Second, it's too stale. Traditional security models, they weren't designed for AI-driven access patterns. And third, it's too stale, and it creates lagging data that creates unreliable insights. And the third is that it's too exposed. It's the security isn't matched up to how AI accesses it and uses it. And that's what you have to deal with. Your tools are getting rolled out, and organizations are having difficulty actually implementing and trusting. And ultimately, that's due to not having a governance plan in place. So, Justin, as an architect, I want your perspective because it's going to be a little bit different. What challenges are you seeing in your conversations?
Yeah, I think you've hit the kind of nail on the head there on a number of points, but certainly AI adoption is increasing rapidly, and over the next coming years, it's going to do nothing but increase more, right? And organizations are having difficulty meeting the challenges of adopting or adapting their processes to meet the demands associated with AI and these new changes that are taking place. So not only existing systems, or as they're rolling out new systems and capabilities today, keeping an eye on the future for AI, but just keeping up with the usages of AI in their environment currently, right? You mentioned shadow AI before. New tools and capabilities are being continuously released in anticipation of this change. Microsoft certainly, leading the way in a lot of great capabilities. You see, the Microsoft E7 license coming out soon, which is going to enable organizations to have new capabilities for Agent 365, which is essentially going to be a new control plane for managing your AI systems and solutions, helping deliver visibility into agents in your environment and analytics on how they're used, key metrics that'll allow technology leaders to act quickly on, performance and behavior and risk. And it'll be able to digest signals and data and information and capabilities across the Microsoft Zero Trust environment, and identity obviously being key and foundational to that. Microsoft has enabled agents to have an ID, which is fundamental to not only securing AI agents, but also managing those agents effectively as well. So there's huge technology changes, changes to Microsoft conditional access, obviously in combination with intra-agent ID to secure things, Microsoft Purview for agent ID, intra-internet access changes, allowing new application insights and analytics for agent activities. But one thing is clear: identity obviously is now the new foundational layer for managing AI and securing AI as well. And it's going to be that first line that's going to really make or break intent.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And that's really the bottom line, right? Is AI has changed the rules for all of us in IT. It's not just adding tools, it's changing how we're approaching our data. We're seeing that disconnected data can't power AI, that perimeter security, can't protect it, and an informal governance policy can't control it. So all three things really have to mature together. You have to have the data readiness, security evolution, and governance leadership. And it's more than just about where data gets stored and preventing it from getting exposed. But we start dealing with new paradigms. You have to like agent sprawl, right? Something we've never thought about before. But when agents start acting as employees and endpoints, we really have to start thinking about who's responsible for tracking those AI, those apps, those agents. And as you scale up into the hundreds and thousands of agents, if something goes wrong, you have to start thinking about in your organization, can you confidently say who owns that specific agent right away? We're essentially creating another layer of management and responsibility that just didn't exist before. And really, like, what we're seeing is most environments are not built for AI. Most of the current infrastructure was built to keep people out. Security infrastructure, right? AI, it requires us to let data talk across systems so that we can be confident in their recommendations. And that's why you get into dangerous silos, because they work great individually for reporting. You can run a batch job at night and look at the dashboard in the morning. But for AI, it's a complete showstopper. And AI needs to communicate in real time. It needs to be secure, and it needs to be able to create context. So if we don't know who is asking, where they are, what their current permissions are across all of the different silos, it can't provide a safe or accurate answer. And so when we start diagnosing really why AI initiatives stall, it really comes back to three things. It's fragmented data, it's outdated security, and it's low data quality. And in no part is it about the model, right? We don't touching the model. The models are existing. The technology is there. It's really the organization that often isn't and doesn't have a plan in place. And I think what we've kind of established, right, the fact that change needs to happen. And really, Justin, can you dive into like the meat and potatoes of our conversation today and talk through the security risk and how our customers need to look at their overall posture and start building on these realities and taking them into account?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned intent before, and identity being, foundational to the success there, but we didn't really dive into, what is intent. And for some, that might be, kind of a new word. And intent with relation to AI, is not especially complex. Intent being what is intended for the the result to be. When you think about a user and a user's intent for an AI interaction, it's really begins with that user objective and what the user is requesting. And if we kind of look at it, in a hierarchy, and we kind of step down a layer, we have, the developer who developed the AI solution, and their intent is, essentially what the agent does and what it's developed for, and defines certainly the quality of how well the agent fulfills its job, and what information it accesses, and security boundaries that are in place, etc. Stepping down from there, we've got role-based intent, and this is something I think that is kind of a new thought that it has kind of been introduced with AI, is that it's kind of the role of the agent that aligns with the business objective or purpose, and authority of the AI agent within an organization, as a digital worker, right? So the role-based intent would be similar to, what its job is, and if the developer and user intents were aligned to, maybe a sales analytics role that was providing, information back to sales users on, why performance in, the East US in Q2 was so fantastic, then that role-based intent would be aligned, within the sales organization, and probably with some type of sales reporting activity as well. And then kind of step down from there, we've got something much broader in organizational intent. So that's something that reflects things like organizational goals and values, and requirements of enterprises or teams deploying the agents themselves. Also, can take the form of things like policies and compliance standards, and needs that the organization has, as well as their security needs from an organizational perspective as well, that the agent is expected to uphold. And so moving on from intent, there's you want to think about where is data with relation to intent, and how does this apply, and let's think about shadow AI for a minute, and kind of think about the different layers of intent there. What comes to mind first there is the organizational intent, right? So these shadow AI applications that users are using, how are those AI applications or solutions aligning to the organizational intent? Well, maybe they are, maybe they're not. Very likely not, as the organization didn't intend for them to exist. So there's some real risks to sensitive data exposure. I think Daniil mentioned users uploading data to AI solutions to get some jobs done and get their work done so they can be productive. But there's some real risk there. If you're maybe you're a healthcare company, and some of that data that goes out to these AI solutions is personal identifiable health information, or something else that is even out of alignment with compliance demands. There's real risk to the organization with those types of shadow AI apps. If we kind of look into intent more, we kind of think about the different kinds of attacks against AI systems and solutions, and a lot of them obviously are focused on breaking or altering the intent. When we think about a direct and indirect prompt injection, we think about users adding instructions to alter the AI goals, inside the prompt, or perhaps inside the information an AI will digest. They may craft inputs to make the AI reinterpret its objectives. I think we've all seen the videos where the AI is telling us how it will take over the world. And, most of the time, I'm assuming those are probably the result of, prompt manipulation and intent manipulation, right? Memory poisoning, getting false data. Maybe attacks sends it to insecure MCP servers, and those the MCP servers have been compromised, or an AI working with another AI gets bad input and kind of provides bad data there, and or maybe some kind of chain confusion where there's multi-step reasoning and the AI is led to shift its focus mid-processed. So when we talk about the intent, obviously it's what the right thing we want to come out of it, and a lot of time obviously these attacks are focused on getting the wrong thing out, whether or not that's your company's data or your customers' data, et cetera. We also talked about AI sprawl. Those are certainly risks associated with poor intent control or cost. Shadow AI kind of fits into there as well. I think we mentioned that we're not really focused on the models themselves, but certainly AI insider type risks if you are developing your own models, training data issues, and other model theft type activities as well. So primarily, I think the focus is, we need a shift to zero trust, right? I know a lot of folks here probably have either begun their transformation to zero trust security or understand zero trust security over the last number of years. The shift to more cloud-centric type capabilities, as well as demands associated with, work anywhere, work all the time, those types of objectives have kind of driven more companies to adopt zero trust controls in order to address the needs of the boundaries associated with, traditional perimeter-based security dissolving, right? How are you going to secure your users leveraging those SaaS applications that are not in your data center and they're being accessed from a coffee shop? All of these types of considerations kind of come into play when you think about that shift to from traditional security to zero trust. Another thing, obviously, that's kind of driven demand for that is just the change in security demand for corporate systems, right? We've got nation-based type attacks, and certainly the threat landscape has evolved over the past number of years as well, demanding increased security, across the board. From a core principle set, we want to make sure that we enable the business, right? So if the business is enabled through the security, then there's nothing to secure. We want to assume breach, verify explicitly, and use least privilege access. And these same core principles need to be applied across our AI systems and solutions, rather than thinking about siloed-based controls for small POCs. We need to kind of look at securing AI from a fundamental and foundational perspective of zero trust. And I think that's a shift. I know it's a shift in, what Microsoft has, kind of thought of from the pillar perspective. Previous core pillars and zero trust mapping were, identity, device, network, applications, data, and infrastructure. And now you'll see here on the diagram the addition of the AI pillar. Thinking that AI is now so large and such a fundamental shift that an entire pillar needs to be dedicated to that within your zero trust architecture. Fundamentally, zero trust is identity driven. You'll see those changes in the release of Intra ID and new capabilities from Microsoft to really put identity at the foundation so that AI applications can be effectively managed and secured within your organization. And some of the fundamental process that, or change for this is, you think about your traditional, service accounts that you created, why not just give it an ID out there and leave it at that. But AI agents are performing increasingly diverse tasks, right? So unlike those applications that are executing predetermined logic, AI agents make these dynamic decisions and adapt their behavior based on intent, right? So depending on what kind of agent you're looking at, obviously they're going to have different demands, but assistive agents may analyze customer data for sales recommendations. That was a great discussion that we had earlier. They may answer support questions and escalate to human representatives. They may live inside your Teams chat, and they may need to access certain information that evolves depending on the need, right? So they dynamically need access to different resources and capabilities. Autonomous agents, obviously, they're operating independently and making decisions and taking action even without human intervention, such as like monitoring agents, security operations, et cetera. Auto scaling is a great example of that as well. And you may have a user account tied to an agent ID that functions with human, slash user characteristics, including things like, access to organizational systems, your Teams chats, your mailboxes. They may want to participate in meetings, and they may want to get calendar access and understand people's schedules so that they can effectively perform their intent as well. So lots of changes in how AI agents interact with systems and solutions, and there's certainly a transition to having AI agents more in a almost a role that is really closely related to a user from a security and governance perspective. And so I think it's a natural shift to incorporate those using, Microsoft Zero Trust tools and capabilities, albeit extended a bit, and we'll chat about that. So, just wanted to kind of, obviously we only have an hour here, so we probably can't dive into an incredible amount of depth. But just want to touch on some of the capabilities that are changing and evolving, again, rapid development, lots of innovation happening right now with relation to AI, especially given the expected changes in AI over the coming years. But let's touch on some of the different technology changes in each pillar and kind of go through those a little bit. But so fundamentally, I think changes to Entra and Agent ID, the enablement of Agent ID, and giving each agent an ID, or each instance even of an agent an ID, is obviously foundational to much of this, being that identity is the core of Zero Trust. Once users have, agents have those IDs, obviously there's a conditional access for agents specifically. So adaptive access control policies for agent patterns across the different agent user account types, real-time signals from agent identity risk to control agent access to resources using various policies and security baselines, blocking of high-risk agents, and obviously the enablement of conditional access policies at scale using different security attributes and supporting fine-grained controls for individual agents. So similar to the way that you're able to group conditional access policy, your target group policy, target conditional access policy for users, you'll be able to do so for agents as well. Identity protection for agents obviously help to detect agent identity risk derived from the agent's actions, including things like unusual or unauthorized activities. So similar to the way that risk is identified for users, risk is likewise going to be able to be identified for agents, and that risk then obviously being controlled through conditional access capabilities to, stop activities that are risky, right? Perhaps an AI that typically does not access, certain locations or perform certain actions changes that, right? It could be some type of, intent break going on at that point in time. That security can help kind of shut down that activity and reduce risk. Those risk signals obviously are able to be processed by conditional access to enforce those, risk policies and session management controls. And they can, you can have agents perform automated remediation using various pre-configured policies and or require user human action. From an identity governance perspective, we talked about agent sprawl previously, but certainly understanding who is the sponsor, perhaps owner of different AI agents. You can make sure that those identities can be governed at scale from deployment to expiration. So you can ensure, obviously, that the sponsor is assigned and maintained. If that user, that sponsor's user, leaves the organization, you can ensure that you have the appropriate policies to reassign agent ownership, or sponsorship to new users in the organization, to make sure that, you have someone to reach out to while you're enforcing that agent access to resources is, intentional and auditable and time bound. Speaking of which, you can have access packages, obviously, same types of identity governance capabilities that you look to Entra for your users today are being enabled for your agents. When we look at Microsoft Purview and all the capabilities it provides, certainly data security being foundational to Microsoft Purview. So certainly information protection capabilities, making sure that AI agents inherit and honor Microsoft 365 sensitivity labels, and they follow the same rules as users for handling sensitive data and prevent agent-led sensitive data leaks. So ensuring that your data obviously is appropriately classified and tagged with sensitivity labels is probably one of the more fundamental security activities you can take. Data security posture management from Purview is going to provide visibility and insights into data risks for agents so that data security admins can proactively mitigate those risks. There's inline DLP capability, certainly extending into blocking sensitive information such as personally identifiable information or credit card numbers or sensitive information types, et cetera, being processed by AI agents, as well as communication compliance that can help detect and enable risky AI communications to enable business leaders to ensure that the AI agents are meeting their organizational intent for things like communication, code of conduct, things like that. Insider risk management extends insider risk protection to agents as well to make sure that risky interactions and sensitive data are blocked and flagged. Data lifecycle management, beyond obviously the need to manage your data lifecycle that is feeding and foundational to usage by AI capabilities, or where that's applicable to those AI capabilities. Data lifecycle management for AI agents also enables data retention and deletion policies for prompts and agent-generated data. So you can manage risk and certainly liability by keeping only the data that you need to keep and none of the data that you don't. And audit and e-discovery, in alignment with auditing and compliance in that data lifecycle management, extend core compliance and records management capabilities to agents as well. So they'll treat AI agents as auditable entities alongside, users, et cetera. And it'll help organizations make sure that they have the ability to audit AI agents and investigate AI agent activity and manage AI agent actions across the enterprise as well. Moving over to the network pillar, there's some substantial changes, specifically in relation to shadow AI as well. So looking at the secure service edge capabilities of global secure access, and within that, the Microsoft intranet internet access. It now offers an integration with Defender for Cloud Apps to give you and bring you application insights and analytics into an app catalog experience like you're used to with the Defender for Cloud Apps integration with Defender for Endpoint, where you're able to understand what SaaS apps are being accessed and what the risk of those apps are, and take action to block and control those applications. This additional layer now enables even broader capability to discover and understand those communications, and includes a specific focus on AI applications, generative AI apps usage across the organization in real time. So you can understand, real-time inventory of generative AI tools used and accessed across your environment, usage insights by users and risk level, and use policy, obviously, to block, control, or maybe you require just-in-time access to specific tools or capabilities. Further, the global secure access can help secure AI application access to your on-premise infrastructure or the infrastructure you may have in your private cloud, to ensure that what is being accessed by your AI agents is the right information, and that you're not leaking sensitive information and data out. From an endpoint perspective, certainly there's continued integration, on the Intune side, in integration with Defender for Cloud and Defender for Endpoint, including that information back to Defender for Cloud, so you're able to ensure that your endpoints are updated with Intune, and that you're monitoring application, especially risky applications, and that using conditional access and compliance, you keep your endpoints secure. And then from the visibility perspective, obviously there's additional depth in Defender, which I'm sure there's no surprise there, and that it's obviously a very robust solution, and that Defender can assist with security posture management for AI, including Microsoft Foundry and Copilot Studio agents, et cetera, detecting misconfigurations and vulnerabilities in your agents so that you can stay ahead of threats and resolve them before they become a problem. But certainly detection and investigation and response, enabling investigation and remediation of attacks, and runtime threat protection and hunting for agents that use the 365 tools will help organizations detect, block, and investigate malicious activities. So, just kind of quickly summarize here is that, these changes to zero trust technology, the addition, number one, even fundamentally analyzing and securing AI with zero trust fundamentally, and then obviously the increased new capabilities from Microsoft focus on integrating agents into that zero trust model really help you secure your AI environment. And that's not just AI sitting in Azure or AI sitting in Copilot, in 365, but across multi-cloud capabilities across all cloud, right? So Arc expanded capabilities, certainly the capabilities through Purview to reach out to data providers that are participating there, all of these integrated together to provide, a foundational security layer for AI, not just Foundry or Copilot.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot to take in. A lot of new terminology, a lot of new responsibilities, and new ways to think about governance and where data pitfalls and agents and all these things fall into place. So, let's kind of align it to a real world example. Let's go on a little journey that we just recently talked to a customer who, they thought they were AI ready. Perfect vertical, right for AI transformation. And in sitting down with their CIO, we saw that their use case was in no way unique. We were looking at their architecture, and smack dab in the middle of it was this massive, decades-old mainframe. And when we started digging into what the plan was for it, she smiled wryly and she said, "It's never gone down." And she was right. This thing was a tank. It was stable. It was reliable. It was processing millions of transactions without breaking a sweat, designed exactly what it meant to do. And in the world of IT, that's kind of a holy grail, right? And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so they really didn't. They did what most organizations in their positions would do. They built around it. They bolted on shiny new cloud services at the edge, added a mobile app. They layered on APIs to fetch more data and created clever workarounds so that their dev teams could move fast without touching that core, scary mainframe core system. But that kind of became the issue for them too. Stable was the antithesis for agile. And over time, that strategy of building around the core started to backfire and created complexity. And that complexity, it didn't just creep in here and there, it really took over. And because the core was so difficult to change, the business logic started kind of leaking out around the edges. And pricing lived in 3 separate cloud buckets. Inventory updates, they lagged behind depending on who touched it where, how a customer came in. And in the world of e-commerce, that it didn't work. That's not functional or feasible. And where they had this whole thing painted for themselves, where a customer would walk into a store or open up the app, they see a promo, but depending on how they interacted with it, the promotion would behave differently, right? Depending on which system caught it, which system caught the transaction, initiated it, and so the experience became fragmented for them. And so as we were digging under the hood, we saw that a single customer purchase was touching 6 different systems. And there was no single source of truth. So while the mainframe said one thing, the cloud cache said another, POS system was trying to keep up with both of them, right? And that created an issue with us as we were trying to modernize and really cemented this AI problem. The leadership team wanted to be an AI-first retailer. They wanted real-time decisioning. They wanted dynamic pricing, personalized offers, all these cool things that we read about online and see our competitors doing. Fraud detection that happens before somebody swipes a card for a transaction. But based on how their infrastructure was set up, AI was just sitting by on the sidelines. Because the data was so trapped behind layers of APIs and legacy code, it was always one step removed. And analyzing the data became a function after the fact, right? They were looking at old data, old reports to make today's guesses. So, and the foundation just really couldn't transmit the power. And we see that happening over and over again, right? Business processes that reach out and touch so many things. And it becomes impossible to look at AI adoption as a point in time event. So Justin, as you're having these conversations in your experience, what are some ways that companies and our customers here can avoid similar challenges and see and make sure that they are AI ready?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it starts with, right now incorporating secure AI as, a fundamental objective in your enterprise architecture model, right? So you don't necessarily have to have all the foundation activities, all the foundation in place to start planning today for AI tomorrow. So as you're going through and modernizing, X application, ensure that you're gathering requirements associated with AI demands as you're moving through that architecture process, and realize that the solution that will be an output of those requirements and needs may shift what you would expect to be the solution if you didn't include those demands and requirements. So certainly make sure that you first start adopting the focus of future AI adoption in your architecture activities today. The second thing I think is realize that AI adoption isn't going to be a project, right? I think at the beginning we mentioned, the POCs of yesterday are moving to, secure AI adoption, governance and governed secure AI adoption tomorrow that's, measurable and practical and profitable. So don't look at, adopting AI and as a project in itself, right? It's a shift fundamentally in your activities across your infrastructure. Secondly, understand that that activity is not going to end, right? So you're always going to be coming back and looking at your foundation and your controls and your policies. And you're always moving through various operational phases and incremental improvements across as you move forward. And AI is going to be fundamental, not only as an objective, but probably in the future to actually completing those activities as well. So looking first at foundation, before you move through, and modernize the foundation to support capabilities like we discussed earlier, Microsoft Zero Trust capabilities to ensure that you have these fundamental pieces in place. Start with a strategy and come up with a good plan, a good roadmap to modernizing your foundation from where you are today to where you are in that future, right? And then move forward and modernize that foundation, right? Get your data where it needs to be. Maybe incorporate capabilities from moving data from disparate systems across various cloud SaaS capabilities, or maybe your on-prem file servers, et cetera, into SharePoint, or data into Fabric. Get it to a place that AI can use it effectively, and get it into a solution that can appropriately govern and secure that data as well. Secondly, as you move through that foundational process, you're going to want to make sure that you update your organizational policies to reflect all the modern changes associated with AI, right? So who owns what, who's going to own what, do we need an owner, a sponsor, what teams or parts of the organization are responsible for X capabilities? Has that been, is there an organizational intent defined that will guide, developers and roles and ultimately end users as they move forward with the usage of AI solutions? And to make sure that you hit those policies in place and that you are then able to at least implement foundational controls to start to govern and enforce those capabilities that are, those policies that are required. And the next is, you're not going to always, it's not a one and done thing, right? You're always going to be revisiting this. Certainly within operational cycles, you'll obviously continue to protect, monitor, and respond, but you'll also have new data sources come online, right? Or you'll absorb data sources and solutions that you hadn't had before, right? And or enable new AI capabilities. So ensuring that you're able to ingest those new solutions and capabilities into your foundation, and that you're able to classify and protect those solutions. Certainly as you move to stabilize and monitor, make sure that things are working as they're supposed to. continuously audit and assess that you are doing what you're supposed to do, and optimize and remediate where you find there's gaps, right? And then just continue, right? Continue that on and on. Again, your individual processes and cycles may be slightly different from this, but fundamentally, I think, the need to incorporate AI into those capabilities exists. So that's, those are some primary focus areas there.
Awesome. No, the cycle, it's a place where we can definitely help to jump in, and but realistically, like, where do we actually start, right? We've laid out a lot and positioned a lot of new things, new ways to think about the future and being AI ready. But if I come to you as a customer and I say, hey, let's engage, but we don't know where to start, can you give me a couple paths and starting points to look at?
Yeah, and we want to think back to that overall cycle, right? And I think it really depends on where you're at today. So if you don't have Microsoft Purview, if you haven't made good efforts to come up with the appropriate data classifications, you haven't assigned sensitivity labels, you're not using the capabilities of Purview in your zero trust solution. Probably a data security strategy is a good place to start, right? Kind of moving on from there, if maybe you have some capabilities of Purview in play, but not all of them, or maybe you're even new to Microsoft 365, you haven't implemented even Entra, or maybe some of the Defender capabilities are kind of lacking. You might look at kind of an overall Microsoft security strategy to kind of look even more broadly than just data security focus. And if you're somewhat mature, you've implemented the majority of Microsoft Zero Trust solutions, you're just moving and changing and adapting your mature environment to evolve to support AI capabilities, or maybe you even have and likely you already have some AI capabilities released, and you want to really focus on what are some of the gaps I have. I'm in a pretty mature state. I just want to discuss the gaps. I think it makes sense to start with that Zero Trust workshop. And beginning in May, that Zero Trust workshop will include tools that help to make that easier and quicker. And we'll incorporate the AI pillar in that Zero Trust as well.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a data strategy engagement, a great place to start. And luckily, we're actually giving one away for you guys. Appreciate you sitting through this with us. So if you scan the QR code, you can fill out a form and get entered to win a data security strategy engagement with us. And in the last couple of minutes, Justin, do you want to dive a little bit further into kind of what that gets them and what the engagement looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a high level, you would expect us to perform discovery, work with you to define requirements, proceed through and develop a conceptual future state design, and then develop and identify, collaboratively the roadmap associated with adoption, what we would call a scope and approach document. A lot of folks some folks may call it a vision scope, project charter, or program charter, pretty similar, but really identify what that journey looks like, what the scope of the projects are that are involved, what the timeline looks like, what the dependency or order is, what type of risks are involved, given that approach, and then, what the business case around it is. So, things like costs, and licensing costs, costs associated with, any external consulting that may be required, et cetera, to really help the organization align that plan with, various business leaders and stakeholders, and as well as other teams or perhaps even partner organizations that may assist in delivery of some of the various projects that are required there. On the discovery front, you should expect us to actually use Microsoft Purview in your environment. So we work to either leverage the licensing that you have today and or use trial licenses to configure Purview to conduct discovery. And that would be discovery of data security and compliance risks in your production environment, including capabilities to discover, stale and sensitive data, data loss, data theft, data leakage, insider risk and risky user behavior, and interactions with Microsoft and third-party AI applications. So we'll provide you a good overview and introduction of the Microsoft Purview products, but we'll also use those products to perform discovery to really help us guide, those next activities in realizing that roadmap as well. So understanding Microsoft Purview is obviously key to helping you make informed decisions about Microsoft Purview capabilities that integrate well in your environment, and really drives discussions associated with that future state solution design, along with requirements. We'll use obviously the discussion about different capabilities that could meet those needs with Microsoft Purview, and examine things like cost and business priority and things like that to help make you and guide, help make decisions alongside you to guide and get to that conceptual design. And then obviously having a good understanding of your current state through that discovery, and an understanding of what that future state conceptual design looks like, we're able to understand, what it takes to get there. And that helps us with that journey, and understanding that journey, including the scope and the projects and such. So that really enables us to help build that scope and approach.
Sounds immensely valuable. So yeah, as we wrap up today, again, thank you guys for spending the time with us. And, as a takeaway, just wanted to make sure that, you understood AI is there. It's being used inside the organizations, and it's something that doesn't have to be scary, but it is something that, we need to make sure that we address, and not just sprinkle into the org and hope that it functions and that it works and that it will do the best it can, right? There are real laws coming out. There are real implications, both financial, customer driven, that do need to make sure that our data is ready and that we create actionable, real, and trustable environments and outcomes through our AI agents. So again, thank you for your time, and come see us at booth 317 in a couple of weeks at the conference.